Alrighty, yesterday or last time, we were working with number lines and practicing adding integers that have different signs. So today we're going to pick up and tackle the same type of problems about how do you add integers with different signs, but today we're going to do it using a different method. And for some of you, this may not make sense, and for some of you, it'll make a lot of sense. And it's just to get you to understand there's many ways to do it, and I want you to find the way that you connect with and make sense. So this time we're going to tackle it by using counters. All right, so let's take a look at this first question. It says -5 plus 3. Now, if we're going to model this with counters, and in your notes, I want you to draw 5 circles that have negative signs in there to represent -5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And once again, pause anytime you need to. We're going to add to this +3, or add 3 to that. So I'm going to grab 3 positive counters. And notice I've kind of lined them up right across from each other. Here's why. Remember yesterday in our vocab we talked about opposites, we talked about zero pairs. Here's where it comes into play so perfectly. A negative and a positive are opposites of each other, and they make a zero pair. Wipe out. Same thing with these two. Same thing with those two. So these 3 positives got annihilated, basically, or neutralized by these 3 negatives. And then you just have to see what's left, who's left standing. And in this case, you have 2 negatives left, so your final answer is -2. Okay, let's just do a couple more, model those. And if this is making complete sense, then you will be able to rock on really quickly. -9 plus 2. All right, so that's going to be a lot. I might go kind of up here so that you can see it. And maybe we'll do it horizontally this time and line them up in a row rather than a column. So go ahead and draw 9 negative counters here while I drag mine over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There, I'm going to cheat. Put them in front. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, we're adding 2. So I'm going to pair up 2 positives against 2 of those negatives. Neutralization, annihilation, however you want to think of this, that makes sense to you. But these wipe out and make a zero pair. And you look and see what's left standing, and what's left standing are 7 negatives. There's your answer. Let's look at some more. Ugh! 6 and -13. Okay, we can do this. And hopefully after a while, you'll start to see the pattern. Okay, 6 positives would be 6 yellows. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Notice I didn't get fancy and put positive signs on these. But when you're drawing on your notes, you're going to have to do that. Now, I've got to get a total of 13 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Good gravy, that's a lot. All right, now go ahead and find your zero pairs that wipe each other out. Boom, there's a pair, there's a pair, there's a pair, there's one, there's one. So all of my positives got wiped out, mainly because if you take a look at how many negative counters you have, there's 13. So of course there's more of those guys, specifically 7 of them, but there's 7 negatives left over, and that's where you have to go. All right, what about this one? See if you can do this one, maybe even without using the counters. I'll model it just so you can see it. But if you have 9 positives, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, 2 of them are negatives. Here's what happens. These 2 wipe each other out, go to 0. There's another 0 pair. Consider these all now as zeros, so you can push them off to the side. And here's what you have left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They're positives this time. Careful, I was kind of letting these guys get a little too close. These aren't really part of our problem. That was just my pile, so to speak. Okay? All right, so in words, what are you doing when you're using counters? Let's get this scripted in words. How do you find the sums of -6 and 4 when you're using counters? Well, here's what you do. Okay? Line up or lay out 6 negative counters, whether you draw them and you put a minus sign on them, or if you physically have the colored ones, they're usually the red ones. Okay, and then against those, line up 4 positive counters. Make 0 pairs. And see who's left standing, basically. Okay, it's kind of like a battle of the counters. And you see who's left standing. In this case, you have more negative counters, so I can kind of tell the ones left standing, even without drawing it, are going to be the negative ones. But if I do it just by drawing by hand, here's your 6 negatives, here's your 4 positives. All of these wipe each other out. And there you go. All right. Now, as you practice and do more and more and more of those, you might start realizing that you can actually do this absolute value way. And here's what I mean by that. Okay. Yesterday we did number line. Just now we did counters. And when you get larger numbers, it gets to be a little more challenging. Okay. When your signs are different, I hope you understand or start to recognize that the sign that has the greater absolute value, in other words, whichever number part is more powerful, meaning this guy, this is the sign of your answer. If I lined up all my negatives and lined up all my positives and made 0 pairs, the negatives are going to win. If we were using a number line, you would go back into negative land or down, and you'd only come back up 12 and you'd still be in negative land. In other words, basically what you're doing, you can decide the sign of your answer. It's going to be negative, and then just come off to the side with the 2 absolute values, the 17 and the 12, and find the difference. It's 5. There you go. And I know my sign has to be negative because the negative number had more power, had more absolute value. Let's take a look at these two. -24, +62. I think the best way to think of this is it's like a tug of war between the negative team and the positive team. Who's going to win? The positives definitely are because they've got more people. This absolute value has more power. The absolute value of this is 62. The absolute value of this is 24. Once you determine the sign of your answer, then just find the difference. Okay? And here, just 62 and 24 and subtract 5, so that give me 30 to my 38. Okay? Mainly because it would be a real pain to try and make a number line long enough to go to -24 and then +62, or to lay out 24 negative counters and 62 positive counters. Holy cow. So this way we think of the absolute value of the numbers, because that tells you kind of their strength or their power. 35 and -29. If I think of the absolute value of these two and which one has more power, this absolute value is 35. This absolute value is 29. Ha. He's going to win the tug of war, which means my answer is going to be positive. Okay, so they're battling against each other or pulling against each other. The positives are going to win, but all 29 of these negatives basically neutralize one of the positive people. So once you find the absolute values, because my signs were different, find the difference. So take and find the difference between 35 and 29. You get 6, and it's positive 6. Now notice, typically you don't have to write your answer with a plus sign to indicate that it's positive, but because I was deciding or determining what the sign of my answer was first, that's why I put it there. So when we are adding integers, if you have the same signs, then you simply add the absolute values. Okay, I guess I should stick in there absolute values of the numbers, and then it has the same sign as your numbers. Okay, so for example, 4 plus 3, add the values, that's 7. They're both positive, your answer's positive. If I said -5 plus -1, the absolute values are 5 and 1. Add them up, you get 6, but since both of these guys were negative, my answer's negative. And you can visualize that if you think number line, you'd be going to the left 5, to the left 1 more. If you're doing it with counters, you'd have 5 negatives and you'd add another negative. Ta-da! When you have different signs, it's different, okay? So here's what you do. You can either go ahead and think of moving on the number line. You can think of making 0 pairs with positives and negatives, okay? But in the big picture, when you get huge numbers, here's what you're going to do. Determine the sign of your answer. And the sign of your answer is going to be the stronger or more powerful number. Who's more powerful? And that's determined by the absolute values. The more powerful number is going to be the sign of your answer. So I'm going to write in there, I'm just going to write abs value. So think who's stronger, okay? Once you determine the sign, then simply find the difference, which means subtract your two numbers, okay? The absolute values, okay? And there's the number part of your answer. So examples here, if I had something like -20 plus 4, okay, I'm going to look at that, and the first thing I'm going to say is who's got more power, the negative team or the positive team? Negatives. And then off to the side, 20 and 4. Just deal with the absolute values now. I'm going to go way up here. 20 and 4, find the difference of those two. That's 16. I already wrote my negative sign there, so I'm good. If you have something like, 12 plus -19. Okay, determine the sign of your answer. Okay, this guy's negative because 19 is a more powerful number determined by its absolute value than 12 is. Find the difference between 19 and 12. So in your head, you're thinking, what's the difference of 19 and 12? It's 7, but my answer is negative. Or let's even think of this. What if you had something like 14 plus -2? I'm going to squish that in there. Sorry. 14 is more powerful. That's absolute value is 14. -2's absolute value is only 2. So 14, the positives are going to basically neutralize any of the negatives over there, specifically 2 of them. And you're going to be left with a positive answer and 12. All right. What if you have a number and its opposite? They make a 0 pair, which means your answer is 0. They completely wipe each other out. So if you had something like -58 plus 58, it's always going to go to 0. Cool. So as we look at the assignment, now yesterday we did 1 through 4. And we also did the bottom of that page, which was down here. So what I want you to do is I will put either on the board or on Schoology what your assignment is. It's still going to be on pages 16 through 18. Watch your signs, be very careful, and may the force be with you.